have her share her stories, which are different than Steph's, and also excited that she's our first special guest. So
yes.
here's
Are
Ciara.
we gonna have her?
Yeah, here she is.
Welcome, our special guest here. I don't know where she is on the screen here, but welcome.
Happy to
Say
have
hi
you.
to the Baby Boomer podcast peeps.
Hi.
Hey. So she is gonna give us a little bit of insight on her pregnancy and labor and delivery because it is different than mine. And I haven't shared mine yet because I figured we could all talk about it together. But do you want to start? Do you want me to start? It's totally up to you.
No,
Go ahead, take the floor,
definitely
girl.
start because I feel like I had a really big doozy for my first one.
Mm-hmm.
So my first pregnancy, we actually tried for 2.5 years to get pregnant. We're really privileged, obviously, to get pregnant on our own because when they offered us the IUI option when it had been like maybe almost 2 years, and I was like, if we're gonna do IUI, like I want to at least be somewhat like organized, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was not like I was like, okay, well we can't do it now. Well, then a lot of crazy things happened, and we ended up just getting pregnant 6 months later on our own naturally, which
That's
literally
awesome.
I couldn't have asked for a better situation if I had tried timing wise, except I had a baby literally, which by the way was like one of the worst pregnancies of my life. I threw up every single day for 40 weeks.
Oh my gosh, we were just talking about that.
My previous direct supervisor literally said that you looked green every single day. And I will say I had a really stressful job. I was working like 60, 70 hours a week. I was literally I was physically at work. You know what I mean? At least 55 hours a week physically. So it was a lot on my body. I think just emotions wise, I didn't really know how to prepare. But I, of course, had a wonderful, we did not find out the gender, which I would highly think anybody in the world. It was the most beautiful, enriching experience. I'll get to that once we go over my delivery story. But I had a baby, right at the beginning of the world shutting down in COVID.
Oh my gosh.
And not just about the world acknowledging COVID on March 16th. I'm talking about when everybody in the world decided, oh my God, COVID is dangerous. So my son was born April 5th, 2020, which was 4 days after Florida, even the world of Florida, right?
Yeah, like everything shut down.
Like if Florida's shutting down, right?
It's
so
real.
It's getting serious. So I got really lucky. So I was closing out at work. I was kind of stressed out. So I was there on a Saturday and it was 7 p.m. and I was like, man, I've been holding my bladder in for quite some time now. I should probably go to the bathroom. Yeah. And then I had literally been having to go for a while, but I was like, no, I'm in the zone. I got to finish this. Like, when you're in those moments where you just gotta get it done. Right. And so I finally go to the bathroom and all of a sudden it's like,
what is that?
I've been doing this for like 5 minutes now. I feel like I shouldn't be urinating for 5 minutes. And, obviously, and I'll say, so because of the world of COVID in March, I didn't get to go to any birthing classes. I will say, admittedly, I didn't do a whole lot of research.
It's okay. Same.
I was very green going into it. Right. So I'm like, what's this feeling? And so I call one of my besties and I was like, hey, remember the time you said you had a really weird birth story? Can you remind me what it was like when your water broke? And she goes, yeah, it just felt like I was peeing for 10 minutes. I was like, oh my God.
How ironic.
And she goes, why? And I go,
I'm in the bathroom.
And so she's like, well, how are you feeling? Like, what's going on? And I'm like, I'm literally just continued to urinate. It feels like for 10 minutes, and I did stop, and it literally was like 20 minutes of just this very steady but small stream. And I was like, this is wild. And luckily, again, I was at work. I worked at a country club at the time, and they had like beautiful fresh towels in the bathroom with me. And so I grabbed a towel because I was like,
God.
Oh my
You know,
gosh.
I kind of threw it down there, and I was like, all right, maybe it's time to go home.
Mhm.
It's 7:30 p.m. on a Saturday.
Oh my god.
So I drive home because I'm like not really sure how to process this, right? Like I'm like, okay, what am I doing? Like I've got to go through the list, right? Like I've got to, do I have
Mhm.
everything I have in my hospital bag? Now the world has changed. So
Right.
what are the rules of the hospital, right? Like
Mhm.
what do we need? How can we ensure that we're following through? Well, I was really fortunate at the beginning because I didn't have any contractions. So I kind of was, and they basically, at the time with COVID, they basically said, unless you are dying or that baby is already coming out of
Like
you,
happening.
like
Yeah.
don't come to the hospital.
Wow.
And so, and my
That's
girlfriend had
scary.
literally, and it was kind of wild. My girlfriend had just had a baby, literally 4 days before or 5 days before us.
Wow.
It was March. He was born March 31st. And she said that because the husband had a little bit of nose drip and they wouldn't test him at the hospital for COVID,
Oh.
she had to give birth vaginally because again they still made us wait to the very end to get first baby in or to give her in. So she had to deliver him vaginally by herself with no epidural.
Oh.
So
Wow.
I'm like terrified, right? Like
Right,
I'm
right.
worried. Like
You've
I'm
heard
gonna.
that
So I'm
story.
like,
Yeah.
okay. So I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, that's a horror story. So we're
Yeah.
going through every list. But I didn't have any contractions, and so I'm like, all right, like let's get everything done. Okay, like let's eat now.
Mhm.
Um, let's go through this list of everything that we need. Do we have everything? Well, I'm looking through the hospital rules, and they're like, you cannot leave once you go. Like once you're in, you're locked in.
Yeah, you're stuck.
Yeah.
And there's still only one person that can come with you, which was still nice because I think there was a time where like nobody could basically
Yeah.
come with you. So we go. It's or we're at the house, and we're like 4-ish hours later. And my husband's like, "Listen, I love you, but your water broke. Can we just go? Like,
Yeah.
can we just go?" And I'm like, I mean, what if we get rejected? And he's like, but your water broke.
Like
Like there's
Right.
fucking
there's no
time.
getting
Yeah.
rejected once your water
Mhm.
broke. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
all
yeah.
right. So we go, and he's like, well, wait, we got to get beer. So we stop at the brewery my husband works at to go get beer, okay? Because heaven forbid we have to leave,
I
right?
mean, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Preparedness.
So
Yeah.
right, and so we go, and so we stop at the brewery to get beer. We get to the hospital. They're like, he can't come in with you. You've got to get checked out all by yourself. And so I'm like, okay. So, but I'm chill. I'm not contracting. So I'm walking
Yeah.
like, hey, everything's good. And sorry, my son is right below
You're
me.
okay.
So that, and so I'm walking in chill because I have no contractions, and the lady is like, are you sure your water broke? Like, are you sure you
Wait.
didn't pee? And I was like, I mean, I literally did this for 10 minutes, like just trust me.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, I can't because you literally are acting as if there is nothing going on with you.
Right. 'Cause you
So
weren't contracting.
and then of course there's like two wonderful ladies, wonderful pregnant women that are like screaming their heads off behind me. And so obviously I was kind of put in the back of the line. And
Right.
so they do the basic test first. They're like, I don't know if what's going on because your cervix is still hard or firm, excuse me,
Mhm.
and you're zero dilated. So again,
Right.
it's already been at this point 4.5 hours, and they're like, we might have to send you back because I don't test you. I'm like, can you just do whatever test? And she's like, well, it's nighttime, so it's going to take at least 30 to 45 minutes to get your results back. And I'm like, whatever. So my
Mhm.
husband is in the car, and he's like a nervous wreck, right? And he's like, so he's watching a movie as I'm going through all this alone, and so we're going all good and fun. And the lady is like, oh wow, I guess that was what's it called,
The amniotic fluid.
thank you,
Mhm.
amniotic fluid. I guess it was. And I was like, I'm so glad you believe me.
Like,
Yeah. Thanks.
So we go, and I call him, and I'm like, I'm like, okay, she believed me. I'm sorry. Thanks for waiting for an hour, babe. When I get the papers for what room we're gonna go in,
yeah.
I'll let you know. He's like, okay, I'll look for it. I'll get the stuff ready. So we get the stuff ready. We meet in the room. Still nothing's going on. They, they suture me up, hook me up, everything, whatever. Nothing's going on. They're like, "Hey, mama, we're just gonna let you chill for a little bit. And it's 1 o'clock in the morning. You're probably tired. Go to bed, and we'll figure this out in the morning." Not 20 minutes later, I go from 0 firm cervix to 4 centimeters dilated.
Oh my gosh.
I think by like 1:45 in the morning. And I'm like, "Oh my God, I was not
big contractions.
Like the pain and just I was not prepared, like even mentally. I was not good. I was not fit. Like I was not emotionally stable at the time. I would say like there was nothing I would say I went into this particular delivery that was really made me ready. And so I was freaking out, and I was like, "Okay, I've got this, but I don't have this." Like I'm, just Ron's, my husband is freaking out. He's like, "Oh my God, what's going on?" I'm like, and again, I forget, like, you watch a video on YouTube and they're like, "Just breathe," and you're like, "How am I supposed to?"
I can't.
My body is in so much pain. So, they're trying husbands are trying so hard to help, and they're being not helpful, right? So we go and we're trying, and so they put in the order for the epidural because I'm 5 centimeters dilated and I'm dying. Like I literally, like I'm pretty sure the entire hospital can breathe. And so the night nurse or whatever failed, and the epidural failed, and it did so she they put in that 10-inch needle like 4 different times in my back.
Oh my God.
Absolutely
and because a part of it was obviously my fault, and I because I couldn't do the whatever
where you have to like stay still and like hold the pillow
because I was like
in so much pain,
and so she tried like 4 or 5 different times to stick it in my back, and like would push, but like whatever vertebrae she was under, it wasn't working.
Dude.
I think it's outside, baby. And so I'm like, so she's like, she's laughing, and which let me tell you, don't laugh at a pregnant woman amid delivery, right? Like poor night nurse, but also like poor mom, like she's she doesn't know what's going on.
Oh my God.
So we go, and that fails, and so I'm like strung out on this pain, and so she's like, "Well, you're gonna have to basically wait until the next lady comes in, which isn't until 8 in the morning." So she's asking me to essentially wait 7 hours.
Well, then is it too late? Like,
right. Well, once you're at 10 centimeters dilated, or something's happening with the baby,
7, like once you're 7, like they pretty much tell you can't do anything. But at that point, it had already been, I think, like I went really quick, but then I kind of like stalled for a little bit because I wasn't moving, which I'll tell you, I feel like lessons learned after all of this, right? And then I wasn't moving. I literally just stayed on my back, like legs up a little bit, and that was it. Well, finally, I'm like, I can't deal with this pain. If you're not gonna let me, if you can't get this epidural in me, like I'm gonna go in the shower and just like hot water this like pain through. And so she let me sit on the little cube in the shower, and I literally thank the higher powers above, because their hot water heaters don't expire. So I literally sat in that shower. I literally sat in that shower for 4 hours straight.
Oh my God.
I'm not kidding. I literally sat
just
in that shower for 4 hours straight. And so she checks me, and she came, like the nurse came and checked me like every hour, and she was like, "You're not going anywhere. Like you're at 5 now." And I'm like, yeah, maybe he's stuck or something. Which, by the way, he had a huge head, so I mean, he definitely could have. And so whatever, we're going. And then finally and I'm like strung. My husband says to me all the time, like, or not all the time, but I'll never forget when I had to hold you up after you were in that shower for 4 hours because you were so exhausted. Because that wasn't obviously like, you're at the end of your pregnancy, you're not sleeping really well. And he's like, I literally had to hold you up on the bounce ball because you were so committed to having this, this baby vaginally that you were doing every single thing and you're at, you're at 5, you're at 5, almost 6 years dilated, and you literally have had zero kind of pain. management, nothing at this point.
Oh.
And so finally, I'm so strung out that I'm so tired that when the next lady comes at like she ended up giving it to me at I think like 8 or 9 a.m. I literally just pass out, which is not necessarily helpful for when you're trying to have a baby, right? So
Yeah.
it didn't just it completely stopped my labor. Like my contractions weren't as bad,
Oh
but
my
it
gosh.
like the epidural and me pretty
Yeah,
much
it slows
sleeping
down.
just completely stopped everything.
Wow.
And so I slept. So I slept from pretty much like 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., which was a solid 4 hours. And by the time I woke up, I think I was at 7.
Okay.
Wow. And it's at that
So
point, what, like 24 hours almost, right? From
Yeah, you're like going on 24.
yeah. And so so that point they're like, okay, we're gonna keep figuring this out. Like you're committed, I'm committed. So half an hour later at 7:30, my epidural pretty much completely wears off. And I get to 8 centimeters dilated. And they're like, listen, we have one open C-section spot at 9 o'clock, or I think it was like 9 or 9:30. And you're screaming in pain.
Yeah.
Like you're telling us that this is really hard on your body, really hard on your mental, like, that. And once he's like, once you tell us no for that 9 o'clock spot,
Wow.
like there is no going back. Like with the COVID protocols, you're pretty much stuck unless it's an absolute emergency, like you or the baby are dying. And they're like, you don't want to put yourself or your baby in that motion because you've already been here in active labor for almost 24 hours. And so I'm like, no, like I'm being so stubborn. Like I'm like, no, like I am a woman. Like I have got this. Like my body was made for this. Even though I didn't do anything I was supposed to do to get to this point, right? Beyond just have sex. And so, I'm so stubborn. And then finally they come back around like 8:30 and they're like, listen, you literally, like, this is the last point of return.
Right.
I am crying in pain at this point. I am fine. I just get to 9 centimeters dilated. And they're like, I know you're there, but like you've stopped. Like
It's not,
there's like it's not happening. They're like, it's not happening, and like you're only like if we had to push for this, if you have to, because I will say I forgot to add that I went to 9 and then I came back to 8. And they were like, it stopped. Like it's not happening, and like unless you literally like do some wild magic with it, that you're gonna be doing this for like 12 hours. And I was strung out. Like at this point, like my epidural had completely worn off. I was feeling every little thing. I was screaming in pain. I still hadn't been able to like mentally manage it. And so finally I kind of just gave in, and I was like, get the fucking baby out of me. Like,
it's time.
I can't do this anymore. Like, it's already, I walked in, like I said, at, April 4th, and it's already April 5th at 8:30 at night, and so I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I gotta go. And so they had to prep me for surgery, all the stuff. And then what was worse was, of course, then they're going to do a spinal tap, right? And the spinal tap is very similar to getting an epidural.
Right.
And so with the spinal tap, you still have to, hunchback. And mind you, my epidural has worn off at this point, right? So I am, and they're basically telling me, hey, you cannot have your husband announce the gender to the operating room if you're under, and we had to put you under if you can't put the spinal tap in. And they're like threatening me, right? Because the guy sucked, and I'm like, don't fucking call me sweetie. Like I was just like, they were giving me all these different pet names, and I was like, don't, like, I don't know who the fuck you think you are. Like, I'm at all of these wonderful, operating people in the hospital room. Because, like, I'm in so much pain, whatever. So of course it's amazing. The nurse anesthesiologist, her name was Barbara, and I'll never forget that woman. She was the lifesaver. I literally wrote like every comment card after that, being like, you're not paying her enough, whatever you think you are. And so she ended up coming in, saving the day, getting in the spinal tap. It was this beautiful thing because I mean, I was pretty much out of it, but it was this beautiful thing. I felt everything even with the C-section, but my husband got to announce the birth to everybody. I had a beautiful baby boy, and it was wild because I really thought I had a girl because I threw up every day. So I was like, I'm having a girl.
There's no way.
There's no way or whatever. And no, I had a beautiful baby boy, and he's like, Ciara, it's Jace. It's Jace, and so that's my son's name. And I tell everybody on why it's the most amazing thing to have your husband announce the gender to whatever you're operating in your drilling room, because the spouses, we're so fortunate to be able to go through the experience of pregnancy. They don't really get much, they're very much outside looking in. They're you got mommy's work phone, and so they're very much on the outside looking in. And so for us, we may give it lots of bad, but we get the first ticks, and so so much beauty within it. And but when they're the ones announcing the birth, the gender, the connection that they instantly feel, and the pride and power that they feel within those moments is just unmatched. And so and my husband will brag to anybody that says when he got and it was. And I mean, listen, don't get me wrong. He had a boy. It was a boy.
There's
always that to it. But he'll tell you it wasn't even the gender part. It was the fact that he got to
know first.
He got to know first. Exactly. And because he got to know first, he got to be able to tell me something about.
Yeah, that is sweet.
Yeah, it's nice to look at it that way because a lot of people don't.
Exactly. And so for that was really special. I actually did not. I was so strung out. I did not even want to hold him for the first 2 hours of his life. So we even. Which is funny because they tell you, oh no, that's how you get connected. I was like, this kid is literally attached to my hip.
I was like, is he in?
So let me tell you, it's not that very attachment issues. So that was our story. He ended up having lots of crazy issues that kind of led to just him. He's just turned 4, and so it's been a beautiful experience, and we love it. My second one, however, was a total accident. I did not, the place where Morgan and I work, it was really funny because you would have thought I planned it this way, because we just had gotten maternity leave, literally 3 months before I got pregnant.
Oh my gosh.
We had just mandated that we were going to allow pregnancy leave, and so you would have thought that I planned that, and I had I did not, so let me just tell you. But I had the most amazing experience, and I was really fortunate enough to have a VBAC, and I worked hard for the VBAC. I exercised. I made sure that I fit every single requirement. I tell everybody, you may not be somebody who exercises even before pregnancy, but you gotta exercise during pregnancy, because there's just all these things that come to it.
100%.
So that's
totally agree.
And my Jace, you expired it, so it says you had to try again in a minute. After a minute,
he's locked out.
After a minute,
know that life very well.
So I was really fortunate, and I will say, and this is one of my biggest lessons learned from my first pregnancy, was you've got to move, and not just during your pregnancy, but you've got to move during delivery. And I wish, that was definitely one of my biggest lessons learned. I watched it. And so that was my biggest thing. And so I had a life-changing, and a completely different experience. My second one, I waited at home, and I waited. Did you see your ornament? Yes. And I waited. So my water didn't break. They had to break it there, but I started getting contractions, so that was a really fun difference. And I used this really amazing app, and it's called Ovia, and so I tracked my contractions through it. And I was like, oh no, this is not just the really hot sauce. I do remember this story where I was like, I didn't know if it was hot sauce or like the salsa that I had, or if I was having a baby.
Right.
That was where I was at with my contractions. And so, because my mucus plug had fallen out just the day before, and so I waited at home, and I waited. We were. By the time I left, I went through. I went through. So it is dirty face. So when I went through, we were. I want to say it was. I was. My contractions were a minute apart. And they were going for like 45 seconds or something like that. Like the point where like you should be having a baby almost.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I am gonna do this the right way. So I am waiting until the very last moment until I've gotta go. And I was again really fortunate enough that our neighbor at the time, she used to be a labor and delivery nurse.
So that's awesome.
She was like, listen, I know you want to do this so bad, but like, you gotta go. Like, because our hospital is like 35 minutes away.
Oh my
gosh. It's not right down the street. So she's like, if you're not trying to have a baby in the car.
In the house,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then please get in the car and go, okay. Thank you. And so I'm like, fine. You win. Okay. So I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. Let's do this thing, right? And so we go, again, completely different story. They welcome us. I'm the one screaming this time coming into the I'm like, and they were the hospital people were literally the most phenomenal people in the whole world, because I'm screaming at them. It's 6 a.m. I started in labor at 6 a.m. By the time I got to the hospital, I was at 6 centimeters dilated. And again, nothing had I'm screaming at them. They were so amazing because I watched the epidural video.
On like what to do.
I watched the epidural video, and they rushed. Somebody literally ran my epidural results to the epidural results to the days. I know.
Play with you.
I know.
Why? So
And this is why Mama Steph has to be in a different location.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, I'm sorry. This is.
Oh, you're good. You are perfectly fine.
Episode, yeah.
I know.
But yeah, and so we go, and again, but this labor and delivery nurse was life-changing. She had the little peanut, which I highly recommend to every single person. They call it like the labor peanut. And she came in and moved me every 15 minutes. And so it was this big deal, even for her, because the one doctor that did not support my VBAC, he's like, I understand you're very passionate about this, Ciara, but I just like, if I will say there were a couple of things that happened, up until that point, but he, because originally my son was breech for like the last, he switched, but I will say I literally walked like 7 miles in the last I went to Disney, and I did lots of walking.
Yeah.
He's coming out.
Yeah.
I tried to get him to get past breech, which he did. No. And so, and boys. And so we, so that doctor was like, no, I'm not comfortable. I told that to the labor and delivery. I was like, listen, I need to have this baby vaginally, so I need to be on my side right here. And she was like, I've got you. And so literally,
that's awesome.
Came in every 15 minutes, switched me. Like I said, I started at 2 a.m. I had my son, I think, by like 11:30 in the morning.
That's awesome.
And it was, and again, I had him vaginally. Like, I did have the epidural, so I was not ready for the pain, but
no.
but it was the epidural didn't stop me this time again, because I moved. I was very active. I was very active delivery. I was very active during like labor. And so between all of that, and we were out of the hospital like between like I said, I checked in sometime at 6 a.m. We were out by, I think it was like 2 p.m. the next day, and we were only there that long because like they thought he might have had like a hearing thing, and so they had to like recheck him before he came out. He didn't even get a bath. Like that's how like
wow.
They get you in and
So
out.
quick. Yeah.
And I will say he was born the day before Thanksgiving, so this day was Thanksgiving. So, everybody's like, everybody's trying to be like, oh, like, we're all like nobody's working. What are you guys
Right.
right? Like everybody's blowing up our phones. Like, did you have the baby? Like,
yeah.
Is today the day?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Like, no, it was yesterday. And so we had a beautiful birth experience, and I
so
feel
glad.
like I try to tell everybody that like, even if you are not somebody who was active, like physically active, like you weren't an exercise person beforehand, please work out or find some type of way to exercise and stay active during your pregnancy, because there is, even if you're just doing Kegels, for every single day, like please stay active during your pregnancy, and as much during your labor, because it's the difference is uncanny, and my ability to have that baby between the two is just life-changing.
Yeah.
No, it's awesome. Aw.
I know. I'm
so glad
happy.
that you had like a good second experience, because I'm basically the opposite. Not that I had like a bad second one, but Morgan knows my first half of that was traumatizing as all hell. But yeah, no, that's awesome.
I'll say
I know.
the big joke after my first one was my husband came over, because again I hadn't even wanted to touch the baby yet, right? And he goes, "Don't worry, next time we'll just get a dog." And
oh my gosh!
So I feel you, right? Like I feel you. And
please,
my second one was again it was a surprise. We didn't know the gender. He got to announce to everybody as he like watched him come out of of my vagina, and so that was always really fun. But we have 2 boys now.
Yeah.
Listen, that was like with me, with Brie, I feel like it was like a much easier process to say, like at the beginning, but then like the end is where it got all crazy cuckoo bananas. And like I was still okay though. I was like, yeah, I could have another baby, no problem. Right. But then after baby Joey, I was like, there is no way. I need like a lot of years in between this, because this is just too much, absolutely too much. But it was funny because while you were talking about like your first labor story, like there were a lot of similarities for me that I went through with Brie. Like my water breaking, and I didn't know what to expect. Although I was sleeping when that happened, which was like wild, because I'll never forget. I literally was having a dream that I was in a swimming pool, and next thing I know, I'm just gushing out water, and I'm like, what is going on? And I was like, oh no, this is it. This is happening. And prior to that, like a couple weeks prior, I thought my water broke at work because I had like a super stressful day. I used to teach kindergarten. So I was like, oh my gosh, no, 100%. It broke. It definitely broke. We went to the hospital, the whole thing, nothing. I was fine. It was just a lot of discharge. But when this happened, my husband was supposed to start working like his last shift the following day. Like it was his last shift. He's a firefighter, and he had his paternity leave set up to like happen literally the next day after his shift. And I went into labor on his last shift, and I woke him up at 2 a.m. and I'm like, it's happening. And he's like, it is right now. Are you sure? I'm like, you can look at the bed if you'd like. I'm definitely in labor. I definitely just broke. My water just broke everywhere. And he's like, what day? My favorite part is like, what day is it? I'm like, you were supposed to work. I'm sorry. I'm like, blame our child. It is not my fault. So, we were like, okay, well, what do we do? It's 2:00 in the morning. So we took our time. I did my makeup because I'm over here thinking like, I'm going to pop this baby out. No problem. I'm doing my makeup in the bathroom. Yeah, we're going to have to post that. But he took a video of me because he's like, is she serious right now? Like, we're about to have a baby and she's just out here. I'm like, I'm fine. Again, no contractions. The water broke, but I felt great inside. I was like, there's nothing going on. Like, I feel fine. So he made a sandwich. He ate. We had to drive our dog to his parents' house, who were 30 minutes away, which is also where our hospital was. So we like dropped the dog off. We're like alerting everyone like, hey, it's happening, but it's also like during COVID protocol, but we were in 2021. So things were still in place where like you could only have one person in the room. They couldn't go in with you immediately. Like they also had to like verify that you were actually in active labor before the significant other could come into the room. And so we get to the hospital, and I just remember like them pushing me on the wheelchair, And Joe's like there waiting, like for them to like tell him what to do. And they're like, okay, well, we're going to have to take her into triage and check to see if she actually had her water break. You're going to have to wait in the car. And he's like, what? Are you effing kidding me? I'm like, you chill out. Because if you can't be in there at all, I will kill you. I was like, just go sit in the car. You're fine. Because they did this too when we thought the accidental, like, you know, when I thought I was in labor, the whole, you know, thing. I was like, we already did this 2 weeks ago. You know what's about to happen. Like, just go sit in the freaking car. So he went, did his thing. They took me up there. They checked everything like, oh, yeah, you definitely are in labor. I'm like, They're like, you don't feel anything? I'm like, nope. They're like, well, you're having active contractions. I'm like, I don't feel shit. I don't feel anything right now. I have no clue. So they wheel me into the room. They get him upstairs. I'm only like 2 centimeters dilated. I had been a centimeter the week prior to me going into labor. So I was like, okay, well, I guess we just sit here and wait. And again, it's like 5 a.m. at this point. By like 8 a.m. that morning, I started getting the contractions. I was probably like 3 or 4 centimeters dilated because they had given me the Pitocin to, you know, speed things along. And I'm over here like, oh my gosh, here we go. This is not fun. Also, while being in active labor and having all these contractions, I had to pee like every 10 seconds. I was like, this is a joke. I feel like I'm going to pee myself if I don't get up and use the potty like the whole time. So I'm getting up, going to the bathroom. I'm also gassy. I'm farting. I'm like, what is happening to my body right now? Like all these things. I'm like, am I going to accidentally like plop out this baby in the toilet? I don't know. And they were also like flipping me. They had flipped me. I had the nurse come in. She was wonderful. My first like labor was phenomenal compared to my second. But like they had flipped me over, whatever. And they had the peanut in there. They're like, do this, do that. If you need to, like stand up, use a wall to like kind of just like put yourself against. If you're having a contraction, it will really help. So I was doing all the things. And they're like, do you want an epidural? I'm like, yes. And they're like, okay, well, we can't give you one until about, I think I had to be like 5 or 6 centimeters dilated. They wanted me to be. They had, I don't know, this hospital had all different protocols. Yeah. And they're like, if your doctor says it's okay, we can, but we like to wait until you're a little bit closer. I'm like, okay, whatever. So
I mean, that makes sense. It's like thinking about it with like, because like mine stalled, right? Like mine stalled my labor. So maybe they're trying to be proactive.
Yeah, they wanted it like before a certain point, but also like after a certain point. So I was like, okay, fine, like do whatever you gotta do. So the doctor came in, he did the whole epidural. I was freaking out the entire time, but I was like, I will stay as still as I need to. I don't care how bad this pain is. I am getting this freaking epidural. Like you can bet your freaking bottom I'm getting the epidural. So they did the whole epidural. It worked. Apparently Joe was like, I don't know how the heck you women do this stuff. Cause he's like, I watched that needle go in. There's no way. I'm like, listen, sometimes you just gotta do what you gotta do.
Yep.
Then it was like smooth sailing. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna chill. I sat back. I texted my friends on the phone.
Oh, yeah.
Scrolled Instagram. I was like, all right, we just like wait this out.
Still happening.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, still here, probably like 7 centimeters now. By about 6 p.m., I'm finally 10 centimeters dilated. So they're like, okay, we're going to start pushing. I'm like, sounds great. I pushed for 3 hours. When I tell you, they had me in every single position known to mankind. Oh. They had me on all fours like a freaking dog pushing. They had me with my legs like out like this with Joe and the other nurse pushing my legs back. And I'm like, what other things are there? Like, I'm like, are we in active labor or am I like in a Kama Sutra book? Like, what is this right now? What is going on? And they're giving me oxygen, taking it off, giving me oxygen, taking off. I'm like, is anything happening besides me pooping? Because that's all that happened while I was in active labor was like, I shit myself. I even remember going to Joe. I'm like, did I just poop? He's like, I was like, wonderful. He's like, it was a lot. I'm like, thank you. So glad to know. Wonderful. So nothing came out of my vagina, but sure enough, everything else came out from, the back end. So all this is going on 3 hours in, and my doctor's finally like, listen, you and the baby are fine. Your heart rates are fine. Everything's fine. We can push for another hour, or you can opt to just have a C-section. And going into this, my mom had 2 C-sections. I was always told by my gyno, who I went to from like 12 years old, that she's like, I don't know how you'll ever have a vaginal birth. You are so tiny. Your pelvis is so tiny. There's just no way. Like my entire life at the doctor's, I had to use the vaginal, what's it called? The septum? What's it called? The thing that they open you up?
The wand that goes.
Yeah, that opens you up so that you can have your pap smear. whatever it was called, I had to use the virgin one my entire life. Okay. My entire life. She's like, there's no way. You're too small. I don't know what's wrong with you. You're too small. I don't know how you have sex. I'm like, I do. I have it quite often. So it works. She's like, I don't know. I'm like, I promise you, I really do. I'm not a virgin. Haven't been for years. But yeah, so I was kind of under the impression and assumption that like, I'm going to not have this baby vaginally, but I'm going to try, but it's probably going to result in a C-section, which like I was nervous about.
You knew that.
Yes. But I also was like super nervous because I've never had a real surgery ever in my life, like never broken a bone, never anything. So I'm like, I don't know. I hope I don't die on the table. Like I see these movies where these women die. I'm like, oh my gosh, am I going to die? What's going to happen?
Yeah.
So the whole time I'm just spiraling out of control because I'm like, you know what? Do it. We'll do the C-section, call it a day. So they wheel me back, stick me on the table, which also like when you're numb from your waist down and they're moving you, you're like a flopping fish. Like they're just like, okay, floppy here, like roll over. I'm like, yeah, no problem. I'll just roll over with my, you know, half my body not working. So they get me on the table. They can tell I'm like freaking out. So my doctors, who I love, both of the ones who delivered Bree, she was like, hey dad, tell us a story about how you guys met. So Joe, you know, starts talking about like how we dated, and he loves to tell the story about how I denied him asking to go out with me the first time he asked. And I'm like, you hadn't even kissed me. I wasn't going to date you yet. I didn't even know if I liked you that much. But, you know, here we are. Here we are 6 years later. So I was like, he's like telling the story and I'm just sitting there like this with my arms to my side. And I'm like, praying to God I'm not going to die. But then I start feeling everything because like you said, I felt everything too. Like everything. I was like, is this even like working? Is the epidural even working anymore? The anesthesiologist could see in my face. He's like, are you okay? I'm like, no, I can feel everything. He's like, okay, I'll give you more morphine. I'm like, cool, no problem. Also, like, yeah, I have never done any of these hard drugs before. Like, they've never been pumped into my body because I've never had surgery. So I'm like, okay, no worries. Yeah, just pump me up with all the drugs. And luckily, everything was smooth. They got her out. It was just extremely painful for me. She cried the whole nine. Joe got to cut the umbilical cord. And we did know what we were having because I'm too impatient. I needed to know. I was like, I know I'm having a girl, but I need to know for sure that I'm having a girl. And sure enough, like, you know, everything. I was like, let's just make sure it's a girl. They're like, it's definitely a girl. I'm like, wonderful. Love that. Love that for us. So yeah, Joe got to do that. But then what was so sad is like when you have a C-section versus vaginally, like they basically, everybody leaves the room except for you and the doctors. Well, they sew you back up. And so like Joe got to leave with Bree and I'm just like there, you know, just praying that I'm still not going to die.
Yeah.
Like, looking at the bright light on the ceiling like, okay, don't let this be a permanent bright light, please.
Right,
I just want to make it through this. But, you know, they got everything sewed up. They wheeled me back to the room. I got to hold Bree. We got to take pictures. I FaceTimed you and Nicole and it was a beautiful thing. Mine is just like the pain and stuff and the, you know, labor for 17 plus hours. That was like, okay, so much. But it's like, I told Morgan this when I had Bree compared to when I had my son, because his was different because it was planned. I had a planned C-section with him. But with Bree, like I didn't know what was going to happen. So like I never was like second guessing like, oh, am I in labor? Am I about to go in labor? I, you know, went into labor 2 weeks early. I had no clue what to expect till it was happening. So I was really relaxed. Like the entire time Joe was like, are you okay? You seem like so chill. I'm like, I feel fine. I'm like, aside from the pain, like it is what it is. What's going to happen is going to happen. Yeah. And I didn't take any classes. I had plenty of people that like I worked with who had taken classes like, you don't need them. You're fine. I'm like, okay, if you say so. So, I mean, in hindsight, I wish I would have taken some like post-baby classes for like sleep training and all that. But that's for next episode. But yeah, I was just like, it is what it is. But then with Joey, oh my goodness. Like we had that thing planned. I knew like there was no way I was going to have a vaginal birth with him. I'm like, it's just not going to happen. Pushed for 3 hours at 10 centimeters, nothing. Like she didn't even budge. Yeah. Her head just got pulled to the front. It was so sad. So I was like, just schedule me for the C-section. Yeah. They were 22 months apart. So like also they were like, oh, you know, it's close. People don't recommend trying to do the vaginal after birth, or after a C-section, but you can try if you really want. I'm like, no, just do the C-section. It's fine. Did it once. I'll do it again. But let me tell you, leading up to that, nervous fucking wreck. I was so nervous. I know. I remember texting you like, I don't know why I'm so nervous for this. Like, is it because of my experience last time? Like, am I worried that it's going to happen again. And I had to be there at like 7 a.m., 6:30 a.m., whatever time it was. And I remember the night before I did not sleep more than like an hour. I finally like got to the hospital and I'm like, okay, breathe, Steph. It's okay. Everything's going to be fine. They get me all hooked up. And as soon as they go to turn on to the screen for the monitor to see like how the baby's doing and how I'm doing, they start freaking out. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, and nobody's like actively telling me what's going on, but they're freaking out and like telling me, did you have a good pregnancy? Was everything fine? Like everything was fine. Like I worked out most of my pregnancy, never had any issues. I mean, I literally just grew in my belly. He was humongous. I was huge. He was 9 pounds when he was born. So like huge baby. He made it the entire term. Yeah. And I'm like, I mean, everything was fine. They're like, okay, well, can you flip to your side? Put on this oxygen mask. Do this, do that. And I'm like, what is going on? They're like putting me on all fours, having me breathe deep breaths in of the oxygen. I'm like, I'm starting to freak out. I'm like, is everything okay with the baby? Is everything okay with me? Now, mind you, Joe's sitting in the corner. He seems fine. And he's a firefighter paramedic. So like, I'd assume if he's freaking out, I should be freaking out, but he seems to be fine. So I'm like, I'm not going to freak out too much, but I don't know what the heck's going on. They're like telling each nurse, like, we need to call her doctor. She needs to come in sooner. We're going to need to get this baby out sooner. I'm like, what is going on? Eventually they all leave. They come back in. They check him again. Everything's fine. So basically what I asked Joe, I'm like, what was going on this whole time? Because I'm like freaking the fuck out. And I'm like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And he's like, you're fine. The baby's heart rate was dropping, but it wasn't anything that was like detrimental to his well-being. He's like, it went back up and now it's like perfectly fine. It's normal. And I'm like, well, why the heck did they freak out so much? Like they freaked me out. Now I'm on edge. And he's like, I don't know. They really shouldn't have handled it that way. Like they could have went a different, way about it. And I'm like, okay, well, I was truly like thinking that the baby was going to die. Like I did not know what was happening. Yeah. And so then, I'm on edge now. I don't know what else to do, what else to think. I'm just like shaking. I'm so nervous. And I mean, the only saving grace of that happening was like, we got to have baby Joey so much sooner. Like we would have been there all day waiting for the C-section. But because of that, it was like, okay, well, the doctor's coming. She'll be here in less than an hour. So let's go get you prepped. So they wheeled me back. They did the spinal tap, which, yes, so much fun. But the whole time I'm like so nervous. And she's like, are you okay, honey? I'm like, no, I kind of just had like a traumatic experience back there. And like, oh yeah, no, it's okay. Don't worry. Like, don't freak out. I'm like, because I'm still freaking out. Like, what if something's wrong once they open me up and take him out? Like, I'm still freaking out because that all just happened 10 minutes ago. But they get me all situated. My doctor, who I love, comes in. She was probably the most calming person of them all. I love her. She delivered Bree and she delivered my baby boy. And I was just like, thank you for being here. And she's, she's so complimentary. She's like, your eyelashes look great. Your nails look so pretty. Your eyebrows look great. I'm like, thank you, Dr. Clark. Love you. But yeah, she was just wonderful and like calmed me down so much. So then, we laid down and they're like, I'll never forget. The one lady had no clue why we did the appointment on 9/21 because that was like the whole big thing was September, the song by Earth, Wind and Fire. Do you remember? Mm-hmm. That was what we wanted to play in the OR. So I'm over here like my doctor knew, but the lady controlling the music had no idea. And she's like, do you like country? I'm like, oh no, we have something in place. And my doctor chimes in, she's like, oh yeah, we're playing September. She's like, it's the day. She's like, it's happening. We're videotaping this and everything. So they played that. That like helped chill my nerves a little bit. Joe was right there next to me, like supporting me the whole way. And that though, like having that type of C-section that was planned, didn't feel anything. Had no idea even when he came out. I was like, wow, this was so nice.
If you didn't have out.
Right. If I didn't have everything prior leading up to it, like that was traumatic, but the actual him coming out and, it took him a little bit to cry. He swallowed a lot of amniotic fluid, which also could have like contributed to everything else that happened prior. But I mean, he was a big boy and I am not a big girl. So that 9 pounds, 2 ounces, I will never forget when they announced his weight and his height, I was like, are you sure you got that right? I'm like 9 pounds, 2 ounces. Yeah, they're like, all right, well, he's measuring at 21 inches and 9 pounds, 2 ounces. I'm like, what? I'm like, no wonder I looked like I was going to pop.
You had a planned C-section because imagine if you had even like had the audacity to think that you would have that baby vaginally at 9 pounds. Like, can't you imagine a 9-pound baby?
And I think the thing that made me even like more just like shocked was Brie was 2 weeks early and she was only 7 pounds like when she came out. So I'm over here like, this girl was only like 7 pounds. Meanwhile, at 7 pounds 9 ounces, she was almost 8, but like she came out 2 weeks early. So she was like ready to come out. She's like, I'm done. Like, let me out of this place. It's too small in here.
Aww.
Where baby Joey's like, nah, keep me in here as long as you want. I'll stay until the last freaking minute. And I'm like, dude, you're 9 pounds 2 ounces. Get out of here. Eviction. Like, the eviction has been served. Get out.
That's so funny. And they tell you that too, by the way.
Yes.
Like when I was telling everybody that we didn't know the gender, everybody was like, I bet you're having a boy, because those boys don't want to leave that womb for nothing.
They're nice
and they're like, I'm good. I'm with my mama. I feel great. And I mean, listen, this kid was causing me every pain under the sun, though. I was like, geez, Louise, child. But no, I mean, it was great. Once he was out and everything was sewn back up and they got me back into the room, like, it was just such an easier process. I mean, a C-section recovery is no joke at all. And with Bree, I was so hopped up on all the different meds and like the morphine and stuff that they gave me that I was just like, what in the heck? I don't know how to feel normal. I didn't feel normal coming off of it. I hated everybody around me. I didn't want anybody near me or Bree. And I was just like so out of it. I remember being in that room, like so completely out of it, and had no idea that it was because I was coming off all these drugs. And I also hadn't slept for like 20 plus hours, where with baby Joey, like, you know, that once the drugs were off, because it was just that spinal tap, that was it. The pain was there. And I was like, oh, this is a little bit different. And I feel normal, but like, I'm also still tired because of all the trauma I just experienced. But yeah, it was definitely like two totally different experiences, even though they resulted in the same type of delivery. But it's crazy. Our bodies are insane.
To your point about just like post care in general. So when you're your first time baby, you have no idea how they're supposed to treat you or how they're like you have no idea.
That's true.
So again, in the middle of COVID with my firstborn, they took out the catheter, or they didn't believe me that the catheter had like moved out of me or something. Because I was moving a lot even after my section, and the night nurse didn't believe me. She was like, "No, you're fine." I'm like, "I promise."
You didn't want to deal with
it.
Yeah,
I'm not.
This catheter is out. I am in physical pain. Like, please, please. So they literally had to. So they literally had to like get like another like somebody like a nurse practitioner to come in and be like, oh no, she's telling the truth, like the catheter's out, like, and the second that they pulled it all out and everything was gone and I could just pee myself there, like everything was great and I was super happy again.
Right.
And so I was.
Well, I'm glad you were able to pee immediately, because I sure as shit was not able to pee.
Oh yeah,
both times I could not pee for 24 hours with my first. Like, they took the catheter out and they're like, okay, we're going to give you the whole day to make, you know, go pee, urinate, whatever. I'm like, okay. Never happened. All that came out of me was blood, because that happens. And I'm over here like, I'm not peeing, but I definitely have to pee. I'm drinking a lot of water.
Did they make you poop before you left? Or?
So no. And that's a whole nother freaking story. Like, they didn't have me poop, which with my mom, she was like, they made me poop. Like, they made sure I pooped.
Firstborn, they made me poop.
That's what she's like, they should tell you to poop. Like, they're telling me as long as I'm passing gas, which I was farting a ton, but as long as I'm passing gas and I'm taking the stool softener, like, I'm fine to go home. Okay. We were there a little bit longer because our daughter had jaundice because she wasn't latching properly and feeding correctly. But like, aside from that, like everything with me was fine. I didn't even end up taking like any of the painkillers or anything. I just took like Motrin and Tylenol. So I'm like, okay, but I couldn't pee. So then that night I'm like, I haven't peed all day. And they're like, you haven't peed all day? I'm like, no. And I definitely have to pee. They put the catheter back in me. I filled up an entire thing twice. There was so much pee in me. And they're like, okay, we're going to give you the whole night to have it in again, but in the morning we have to try again. I was like, that's fine. And of course I was able to pee no problem the next day. With the pooping situation, I got home from the hospital 3 days after I delivered our daughter. I immediately felt like I had to go to the bathroom. It was the most painful experience of my life. That poop would not come out. I thought I was going to die from the incision pain. Like, I was screaming bloody murder. My mother, bless her soul, because it was between her or Joe, was like, who volunteers as tribute right now to shove something up my butt? I needed that suppository in my booty hole, because that was the only way I was going to go to the bathroom. And I was like, It's between the two of you. You've seen me poop recently. Yeah. You've had sex with me. You gave birth to me. Figure it out. I don't care. And I was like, you know what? Yeah. I was like, Mom, you do it. I honestly feel more comfortable with you shoving something up my butt. So like, you handle that. And then it came out, no problem. But that was so freaking painful. And with baby Joey, same thing happened with the peeing. I couldn't pee immediately after, which for any women who are pregnant listening to this, have peppermint oil on hand or ask your nurses for peppermint oil. One of the nurses, thank goodness for her soul, she was like, you can't go to the bathroom. I'm like, no. She's like, one thing she said was to do a hot shower, which did not work for me. But she said, do you have peppermint oil? I'm like, no. She's like, I'm going to find you some. She's like, people say if you sniff peppermint, it will like activate your urinary system to like pee. I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah. Sure enough, I'm sitting on the toilet sniffing the peppermint oil pad she gave me, immediately start peeing. So just for my women out there,
I love that. I
love that. I'm like, this is wonderful because I was like, I can't pee. It's again, we're going on more hours and the nurse was not believing me. And I'm like, I'm not peeing. I need to pee. I'm sorry. I don't know why my bladder doesn't know how to wake the F up after this whole catheter situation, but like, I need to pee in a toilet and it's not happening. And my bladder's killing me because I'm holding in all this pee for hours and hours and hours because they want you to pee on your own. But I'm like, I can't hold this much pee inside of me. Yeah. Like I already have a tiny bladder. I go to the bathroom 20,000 times a day. So I was like, wild. But then the pooping with baby Joey, I was fine. Pooped no problem. Depends. I don't know what the issue was like with Bree's labor and delivery that I couldn't go to the bathroom while I was there. But with him, I went like the next day. I'm like, okay, don't know. We'll never understand it.
I will say post C-section too, just like you're mentioning, like the drug. Like I was just like I was so stubborn throughout that whole situation that I was like, I'm not taking these drugs. I'm like, you can give them to me, but I'm not going to take them. By day 7, I still hadn't taken any of the drug at that point. I felt so wrecked by day 7 that I was like throwing out the medicine cabinet, like just give me something. Like, because I was in a lot. That was day 7 through 10 is when I really feel like I hit like my pain threshold to where I was like, okay.
Well, and especially because like as you know, women and we're giving birth, and then all this is happening, like they expect you, like, okay, well now it's time to take care of your baby, and you need to pick your baby up, and you need to feed your baby, and you need to do all these things, and it's like, where's the time for me to rest? Because I'm not resting. I'm not healing because I'm up doing all this stuff with my baby. And, especially most women want to breastfeed or nurse right off the bat. And it's like, it was so hard for me with Bree because she had a hard time latching and I didn't know what the heck I was doing because it was my first. And even during those lactation consultants like coming in, I was out of it. I was so tired that next day from the drugs and not sleeping. But like I wasn't even hearing what they were telling me to do. So like that experience, right? And that experience was really hard for me. And then like we get home and her and I are both like going at it. I'm like, I'm just gonna pump. I'm gonna exclusively pump and put it in a bottle. I don't care. And it lasted as long as it could till I dried up. But like with baby Joey, like he latched immediately, which was great. But I had so much more pain with my C-section the second time around, probably because it was like again. Only 22 months later that I'm getting cut open again.
Well, and major abdominal, that's major abdominal surgery. Like people forget that is a major surgery. This is not like just because vaginal delivery has been around since the very beginning.
Right.
Like cesarean is not a joke. And
people think it's the easy way out, and it's like it's not actually. It's not I would 100% rather do the vaginal if I had the opportunity to, because there's just. It's so hard because you are recovering.
Your doctor was basically telling you you're not even stubborn me would be like, no, like I'm gonna do this, but like I appreciate you because you're like no. And by the way, because you were so giving into that, you probably had like with Joey so much a better experience than you could have had if you had been stubborn. And a 9-pound baby out of your vagina.
Right.
Like,
or have another emergency C-section. Because, I was like, if I try this, I'm probably just going to end up with another emergency. I don't want to do that again. Like, I'm not here for that.
At risk.
Yeah, I just want to, like, get this baby out the best way that we can. But, everything worked out. Thank you. Everything worked out the way it was supposed to. And it was definitely, like, post was so much easier, even though it was more painful because the healing process was a lot harder. But I feel like it also didn't feel like as long of a healing process. I don't know. I also worked out with him. I didn't work out with my daughter. So I do agree with that. Makes healing so much better for your body. And yeah, I didn't really need to take anything. I mean, by day 3, I wasn't even taking like Tylenol or Motrin or anything. With my daughter, I probably took them for like a week straight, but with Joey, I was like, no, I feel good. I'm like, oh, it's been like 3 days and I haven't taken a pill for any pain or anything. Yeah. Like, I don't know. I'm here for it though.
As a listener, I'm like, well, I feel like if someone who's listening is pregnant, like they just need to be like, everyone's situation is different every single time. So like, don't compare yourself.
Go in, don't compare and go in with an open mindset because it will save you the stress. Like I know people want to have, like you were saying, you were very stubborn and like wanted to have that birth plan that like you're going to have a vaginal birth. And that's why I kind of went into it with like it is what it is. What happens is going to happen, because I know myself and my anxiety and my stress will like not do me well during labor if I have this like, you know, I want to do this. My mindset is I need to do this instead of just like, let it happen the way it's meant to come out of me. If it's this way, cool. If it's that way, cool. But that's the thing, because you do have to kind of go into it with that open mindset just to save yourself some stress, because it's already a stressful experience to begin with.
And I will say, even your own personal labor and deliveries and pregnancies, no two are the same.
Right. Well, yeah, 100%.
The joke for me was like, I remember, I'll never forget texting my girlfriends, because I was like one of the last to get pregnant of like some of our close friends. And I was like, why did nobody warn me about these hemorrhoids? I'm like, the hemorrhoids.
I've heard of that,
I am dying. Like, what is going on? Like, I had never had hemorrhoids before that point. So I'm like just thinking, what is going on? Like, I'm going crazy with my first pregnancy. And then ironically, that's actually how I found out I was pregnant. With my second pregnancy, I literally was like, I don't get hemorrhoids. Like, why do I suddenly have hemorrhoids? And what is going on? And I'm like, I'm at one of my best friend's houses, and I was like, man, like I know, like TMI probably, but I mean, her and I have been friends together because my husband and I have been together for like 10 years, and like she was a part of all of that, and I was like TMI, but like, I have just like these crazy hemorrhoids right now. She goes, have you gotten a pregnancy test? And I said, what?
Oh my gosh.
I go,
well, thank goodness for her though.
Not. And I will say, so you said something along the lines of like, they tell you not to have a baby, basically. You should not get pregnant until after 18 months, because by all technicality of your body, your body needs to heal. And I know there's these like super women who have like 13, like, you know, what do they call them? Like Baker, like Irish twins or something.
Yeah, which like,
and like I love that for them. And I encourage, if that is what you believe, like the strength of your body can withstand, like phenomenal women, like so strong. But like medically, like biologically, they tell you your body has not even physically, mentally recovered until 18 full months after you've had that baby.
Yep.
So
it's true.
Even you, like, you know, 22 months is still is still really close.
Yeah. So I made it a year exactly. Yeah. No, 100%.
Wild.
I remember my gynecologist, I was asking her like, so what is like the window of what should I wait? And she's like, honestly, 12 months would be good, but 18 months would be ideal. She's like, if it happens after 12 months, it's not the end of the world. But like before that, we could come into some issues because like you have a scar still. You're still healing from the C-section. So she was like more worried about that more than anything. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. But we made it. My daughter was born November 14th. I definitely conceived baby Joey at some point in December, probably around my husband's birthday. So that's where we're at. We made it just a year shy, like right there. And then I found out I was pregnant in January and I was like, oh, look at that. Look at that. Yeah. So it was like both. What's funny is like you said you guys were like obviously trying with your first. And what I told Morgan is like, we had just gotten engaged and I was like, well, I'll get off birth control. I've been on it for 11 years. I really don't want to be on it anymore. And if it happens, it happens. I don't think it's going to happen that quickly. Well, it happened that quickly for us. It was literally a month in and I was already pregnant. I'm like, okay, well, here we go. Like we said, we want to have a baby at some point. Like it is what it is. So like it was just such a different thing because with my daughter, we knew that we were fertile and it happened quickly. So with my son, we kind of knew like it could happen. We need to be careful, but you know, there were days that he wasn't as careful.
I was actually going to ask you that question. Were you on birth control for the second, or leading up to the second, or were you completely
off? Once I got off, I was off for good. I'm like, I don't want to get it back on it. I don't want to do that to my body. I was on it for so long. Like I was lucky that after 11 years, I didn't have any complications with getting pregnant because obviously it happened so quickly. So yeah, we were just, pull and pray. I didn't even track like my ovulation. I was so bad.
You
like
didn't
that
even
first
track your ovulation?
My first year postpartum, I'm like, Joe, let's just hope for the best. Hope for the best. And there were a couple times in that month of December that I was like, did you pull out properly? He's like, I may have missed it a little bit off. So I'm like, well, when I get pregnant, we know what. And sure enough, I was
goodness.
You're a little like, so oopsies.
I'm super crunchy. Like I'm very against like all the hormones. So I actually haven't been on birth control. I tried birth control for like 3 months, maybe 6 months when I was in college. After I was sexually assaulted, and like I just got very like crazy, you know what I mean? Like you never know. And I swear to God, or like, I literally was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs on birth control.
Yeah.
Like legit.
It changes you.
Yep.
I swear to God, just like the hormones that were getting pumped into my body were just, I was another person. Like and so I completely stopped. And I feel like that's always been like my scariest thing when it comes to it. So I am, even now, I track my, like
cycle and everything.
We do not plan on having.
I'm much better now about that.
Or what do they call them? The ones like not the UTI. What is it called?
Oh, the IUD.
Oh,
Is it an IUD?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Like there will be no anything near my body, and I still have to track. Like I'm currently on the end of my my time of the month currently, and I'm like, all right, like here we go. Here are the months, here are the days.
Well, that's what's like now I am like so much more anal about it because I'm like I am not ready to have another kid anytime soon. So like we are pumping the brakes and making sure. But like I was telling Morgan the other day, like I knew I was ovulating without even looking because I have the worst ovulation pain now after having kids. I'm like, what in the heck is this? Like this is worse than periods.
Side too? Do you notice how it's on one side and then the other month it's on the other side?
I'm like, this is so
cool. You can feel your eggs dropping.
It's crazy. And I was in so much pain the other day. I'm like, what is happening down there? Like, I know that you're doing your thing, but shit, like stop. I just want one normal freaking ovulation. Oh, I'm sure.
Scar tissue down there.
Yeah, especially after 2 freaking C-sections in 3 years. I'm sure there's a lot of things down there that are not completely back to normal. I mean, I know from just like the way that I look, I'm like, okay, we need to like get everything back inside because I know that my organs are still all over the freaking place.
Yeah.
Like I need to start doing the ab rehab and get my abs back to where they're supposed to be.
Your pelvic floor.
Yeah, my pelvic floor is definitely not where it needs to be, which was the thing with Brielle. Like I was not good about, I worked out after her, but I never focused on my pelvic floor like I should have. And I regret that so much. So like with baby Joey, like postpartum, I'm like, no, I'm working on my pelvic floor. I'm doing all these things to help my abdominal muscles and all that because I didn't do that. Like I worked out, but I wasn't focused on my stomach at all, which I definitely think played a huge role.
You're 6 months.
I'm 6 months right now. Yeah.
6 months now.
So he'll be 7 this month.
You got to take, you also have to like take time because your first year is your first year is so hard, and especially with 2.
Oh yeah.
Morgan can probably tell you, like, so my second born is now, he'll be 2 in November. And I can tell you, like, I don't cry. Like, I've just never been I've been dramatic. Morgan can tell you I'm very dramatic, but I am not a crier. Like, I've just never been able to, like, produce tears, like, for as long as I can remember. And, like, the point of postpartum for me with my second, and I don't know what it was, maybe because he was unplanned or something, but like the second one is just so hard, like the things that you go through. And I will say, so I breastfed my first for 18 months. And then my second, we're still going.
Nice. Kudos to you.
But it's hard. Like
it is.
It's a mental thing. And I tell everybody, like, first of all, breastfeeding in itself is not for everybody. Whether it's because you physically
it wasn't for me.
And whether it's because you physically cannot, or like, because I have some incredible women that I know that just probably had too much testosterone on the body, and they never produced. Like they never produce.
Right.
And like their hearts broke in that moment.
Right.
Nobody talks about how in those moments, like when your baby's in your lap or in your at your breast, and like everyone's telling you try,
and it's not working, it's not happening.
Like the amount of disappointment that some moms have to feel because we're so focused on giving you this liquid gold that only you can produce.
Right.
Yes.
It's so hard. And so so like I tell everybody, like, if you can, great. If you choose not to, guess what? That's still your decision.
Right.
Like nowadays formula, like there's so much.
There's so many different kinds and so much information on them. Yeah.
So much. And so it's like, listen, if you can, great. But if you also choose not to, that's a great decision for you. And let me tell you, your mental health probably skyrockets more than my
I can definitely speak to that, because with my daughter, I did for 3 months, but then I went back to work and I just couldn't stay on top of the pumping and all that. And it was just mentally, I was not doing well. And I didn't even know it had anything to do with breastfeeding and pumping. So then we stopped and like everything kind of changed for me. So then with my son, I was like, listen, like I told my husband, like, I'm going to do this as long as I can. But like the minute you go back to work, because he's gone for 24 hours at a time, I'm like, there is no way in hell that I'm going to be able to breastfeed our son and take care of our daughter by myself. No. Like, I don't care. It is very difficult to do both those things at the same time by yourself. And mentally, it's just not for me. No. Like I said, all the power to the women that can do it and do it for as long as like you're doing it. I would never be able to. It's just not in me. Listen, and it is what it is. Like each one's.
But I say to everybody, like it messed with my mental health though.
Yeah.
So my husband,
it's hard.
It wasn't a full 24 hours. My husband works nights because obviously he runs a brewery, right? So we're dealing with that. And the nights where I had to breastfeed my second and have a full toddler running around effing shit up, like that is a part of it. And I called him like a little terrorist for a really long time. All he wanted to do was blow it up and blow up my spot and whatever I was trying to do. So I just know that I always try to say, like, for all my moms out there who feel like they're not enough because in those moments you choose not to. It's so not true. Because there's so
just
much
being a mother is a superpower in its own. And that's why women can only do it and men can't.
Yeah, seriously. Listen, my mom was never. I didn't even meet my mom until I was 18. So you know what?
Wow.
Like you're a great mom, and everybody's a great mom because they want them there.
Right.
I'm so sorry, ladies. I'm gonna have to dip out.
Oh, you're good. Thank you so much for coming.
I'm missing out on your Q&A.
No, it's all good.
You are good.
I'd love to be on again. I hope you have a wonderful night, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Let's see. I feel like we should wrap it up as well.
Yes. I was going to say, if you wanted to do like a speed question for like 5 seconds, 5 minutes, we could do a quick. But some of them were answered in there. I feel like.
I think a lot of them were. Like, what's your number one thing you'd want to tell someone that's pregnant, that like what's a good question for them, for their doctor or lactation specialist? That was one of the ones I had written out here.
I would definitely recommend doing research prior. I did nothing. I'm not going to lie. I would recommend looking up and seeing if there's like lactation consultants that you can talk to prior, just so that you kind of like go in knowing what to do a little bit more. But they have them on site. So like you can literally ask them. For me, it was so much chaos that I just couldn't even focus on hey, let's, put the baby on your boob and figure this out. Like, no, I'm half dead right now. So I think if I would have looked into it and actually tried, I just figured I'm going to stick the baby on. She's going to latch. We're going to be good. No, doesn't always work out that way. So again, don't beat yourself up if it doesn't happen immediately either, because it's a learning process for you and your baby.
Right.
They don't come out the womb knowing entirely what to do. I will say this much. What I found really interesting with my second birth versus my first, which no one told me, if you plan on breastfeeding, nursing, you need to do that fully and only that. If you plan on bottle feeding, even if you're pumping, if you're just solely pumping and putting it in a bottle, then you need to do that. You should not do both.
Okay.
Breastfeed, nursing and also bottle feeding messes with the baby, and they don't know what to do if you're going back and forth. I did that with Bree. Nobody had told me this. I had no idea. With baby Joey, somebody told me this. I was like, okay, well, I know I don't want him on my breast. It's too hard. Right. With the C-section, it's too hard for me to pick him up and get him there.
Right.
It's uncomfortable. I'm in pain. So I'd rather just exclusively pump, take that breast milk, put it in a bottle, stick it in his mouth. And that way also dad can help out. Exactly. It helps out a lot mentally too, because you're not the one entirely doing it on your own. Yeah. But I would say just look into it, do your research, talk to your doctor if you have any concerns prior, but they are there to help you, especially the nurses once you're in your little postpartum delivery area. But yeah, I mean, we kind of,
I know.
We'll be getting into that.
Yeah.
Yes. We'll be getting into that next time. We know this was a little bit longer, but that's what happens when you have guests and stories. So we do hope you guys enjoyed. I know that I'm ready to go eat my tacos.
Yes, it is time.
So it is time that we say our goodbyes, but remember to follow us on our social media platforms, Baby One More Podcast. We have Instagram, we have YouTube, we have TikTok. I almost said Twitter. I'm like, we don't have Twitter. Don't go on there.
None of that.
But we do have those 3. So check us out, and we'll catch you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.